Hello everyone and welcome to a new episode of All Things IDA. In this episode, I'm going to be answering a few questions such as, is my IDAPython script running in IDA or IDA 64? Is it running in IDA text UI or IDA graphical interface? And also we're going to be answering, what is the bitness of the input database? Are we working in a 32-bit program, 16-bit program, or 64-bit programs? All those questions will be answered in this small and short video. Let's get started. So the first question, are we running inside IDA or IDA 64? To answer this question, let's run ida.exe with an empty database and ask the question idc.ea64. This will return true if we are in IDA 64 and false otherwise. So just pressing enter like this, because I run IDA.exe, I got the false. Now if I run IDA 64 and try again, I'm getting true because I am indeed running in IDA 64. Now one thing to keep in mind is if we get EA64 is true, it doesn't mean that the input database is actually created from a 64-bit program. And the opposite, if we are in IDA.exe where EA64 is false, doesn't mean that we're dealing with 32-bit program. We could be dealing with 32-bit program bitness or below. So we have to keep that in mind. IDA 64 can disassemble 64-bit programs, 32-bit programs, 16-bit programs. And so we have to ask a different question. So the first answer is whether we're running in IDA.exe or IDA 64. Now the second question is, are we running, what's the bitness of the database we're dealing with? So if our script wants to know if we are, let's say, disassembling a PE file, PE plus file, and so on. So to answer that question, we have to ask the IDA global information object through the inf_get methods. So like get or is and so on. So I'll show you what I mean. So for this, we'll have to go to ida.hpp and we have a bunch of helper functions just for that. So we will ask inf is, and for example, is 16-bit, is 32-bit exactly, is 32 bits or higher. So let's see, for example here, I have an IDB file, that means it's IDA.exe. But this was created through a 16-bit program. So that doesn't mean that if we have IDB, we're always going to be working in this bitness, 32 bits. We have to ask the question. So we ask IDA API.inf is 16 bits. And indeed, this is 16-bit program we got through. We can ask, is it 32 bits exactly? Of course, it's not going to be. Now, if I switch to this database here, this database is created by IDA.exe, but it's a 32-bit program. And if we ask, is INF is 32-bit exactly, we get through. Now, I could also have a 64-bit PE program disassembled by IDA 64, like this one, 64 bits.i64. So we can't make the assumption that we're working with 64-bit, of course, but we can tell we are running in IDA 64. And then to check the bitness, verify, is ask the question, INF is 16 bits. It is true. So that's how we can detect. So we can have different combinations. For example, here this is Wismo32 created by IDA 64. So it's IDA 64, but 32-bit program. If we ask the question, for example, is 64, it should say false. Is 32? Yes. Is 32 or higher? Yeah. And for a pure 64-bit one, this is a pure 64-bit application. We can ask exactly for 64-bit or 32 or higher. So let's ask for is 32 bits or higher, true. And if we ask exactly for 64 bits, we got that answer. Now we have one last question is, are we running in either graphical user interface or either text UI? And that will make a difference, for example, to know whether we can use graph view, if we can use Qt library directly, and so on. So to answer this question, we have IDAPython.is IDAQ. IDAQ stands for IDAQt basically. So since we are already in the graphical interface, the question is IDAQ returns true. Now if I run IDATextUI, IDAT.exe minus t for just an empty database, and open the snippet window and print IDAPI.is IDAQ, run it, we should see false. We are not in IDAQt, we are in IDAUI. Great. So in summary, we covered how to detect if you're running in IDA or IDA64, what is the bitness of our input database, and finally, whether we're running in either text UI or graphical user interface. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.